And welcome back. Well, Newfoundlanders are definitely known for their unique sense of humor. At Humour's Edge is a half-hour documentary that delves into the topic of humor and the cultural connection that it has to our province. It features an array of comics from here and abroad, including Johnny Guardhouse, Darren Frost, Snook, Sean Majumder, and Sean Cullen. Now, Anthony Tooton is the creative force behind the film. He joins our producer, Jen White, now in the studio.
Thanks very much, Aaron. Anthony, welcome to Out of the Fog.
Thank you for having me.
So you've created this comedy special about Newfoundland and Labrador called At Humour's Edge. Can you tell me a little bit about it and how you came up with the concept for it?
Certainly. Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer that we should have a comedy festival here. And with the St. John's Comedy Festival having started in 2007, I knew that there was quite a bit of momentum going on around that, and they were bringing in acts from all over the country. So I had been at film school at the time, and sometimes in my off time I would interview and or shoot comics, say at Yuck Yucks or different comedy clubs, just on the side, the same type of thing I would do with bands and musicians and whatnot. So, so I came back home to do a documentary about my family and photography here, and then on the side I decided to put together this concept for the documentary, and then used the St. John's Comedy Festival really as a conduit to get access to the comedians, having also already known some of them from my previous time in Toronto.
So like you mentioned, that previous time that you did spend filming some of the comedians around town then, what was it that first initially drew you to comedy, and why did you have an interest in it?
Well, I think that stand-up comics probably are some of the most independent performers that you can find on all levels. And it's a lot like independent musicians, except in most cases they're alone. So if they're affiliated with Yuck Yucks, for example, in ways that's great, but also there's others who aren't. And there's people, you know, different comedians at different levels. So so I've always been drawn to that element, and I think it's one of the purest forms of, you know, of performance that can be found out there.
Mm-hmm. And so in your movie then, you do have a lot of big name acts, some of them homegrown, like Mark Critch and Sean Majumder, but also some other comedians, some big names like Sean Cullen and Steve Patterson.
So yeah.
What was it like working with them and filming them?
Oh, it was fantastic. I mean, it's one thing to film them because I'm behind the camera, but at the same time, I was interviewing them in front of the camera, so that was just great. It was very smooth. It's always interesting to get different comedians' perspectives on not only their work, but in this case, their views on Newfoundland, because we are unique. And so I was curious to know how they went about tailoring their jokes. You know, to what extent Steve Patterson would tailor a joke here for a Newfoundland audience as compared to, say, Toronto, or when he travels to the UK or wherever else. So the responses were great, and at the same time, you'd find guys like Darren Frost who have a very specific persona on stage and are known for that, and the type of issues that they bring about through their act, but then off camera, it's a complete juxtaposition, and so you get to see the very professional, very courteous side as well.
You do have some other interviews thrown in there with the comedians and their performances with actors like Andy Jones, Amy House, Pete Soucy. What was their take on comedy and the connection that it has to this province?
Well, it's very interesting in that respect, because I was most curious in speaking with them about their roots and how they've seen comedy change here in Newfoundland. In many cases, they've tailored aspects of their original characters or performances, whether they were acting with troops or on their own, for stand-up and stand-up scenarios. So it was great to talk with Amy House about, she's also an artistic director, so so I was speaking about the business, but also, you know, how she tailors her approach for a room full of, you know, 500 or 600 people. In the case of Pete Soucy, it's just an amazing juxtaposition across us all, from a producer, you know, being interviewed to, you know, Snook, who, which is essentially a, you know, a household name here. So to be able to do that through the editing process and on film was really great, but also to go from his perspective on how he came up with that character and what it means in terms of Newfoundland humor, I think is great. With respect to Andy Jones, he represented a, he brought about a really cool approach, because he was talking a lot about Newfoundland culture and the fact that we do come from a place that is rich in history, and we've had difficult times. So humor has always been a form of escape. So that was great as well. And also he spoke a bit about Codco and his earlier years.
So I wanted to go back now to the title, At Humour's Edge. What is the significance of that, and how did you come up with it?
I came up with it, it just came to me. And then I wrote a proposal a couple of years ago and pitched it to Leo Fury, who's one of the executive producers of the Comedy Fest. And yeah, I just said, look, we got this idea, or I have this idea. And so really, we're, you know, at the easternmost point in North America. And I just feel that we're as edgy as we are distinct. So it's really, you know, humor at the easternmost edge of the coast. So
that's so great. Well, Anthony, good luck with the film.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on our show.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So you can catch the premiere, actually, of At Humour's Edge on NTV HD on Saturday, June 9th at 11 p.m. We have to take a quick break, but right after this, more Out of the Fog.